Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And thank you for joining this learning experience brought to you by Harness. My name is Cody, and welcome back to Techstrong Learning. We've got an exciting panel ahead, but before we dive into things, I have just a couple of notes I'd like to review with everyone. First of all, we are recording our session today. So if you happen to miss any of our discussion, if you'd like to rewatch at a later time, or if you'd like to share this with your team, you will be receiving a recording of this session shortly after we conclude our live program today. Now, if you'd like to get engaged, there are a couple of ways to do so. The first way is to use the chat tab on the right side of your screen. So when you find that chat tab, I'd like you to let us know from where in the world you are joining us from today. If you have specific questions, we do want you to direct those to the Q&A tab. And we'll be doing our best to mix these questions into our conversation as we go today. So feel free to send in your thoughts as they're relevant and as they pop up, and we'll do our best to address them. Additionally, we will be selecting 2 of our most engaged attendees to win a $50 Amazon gift card. So be sure to stick around and let us know your thoughts in our post-webinar survey, send in your questions, and of course, send in your chats. So our topic today is Advanced Blueprint for Modern Software Delivery. And I'm joined today by Martin Reynolds, Field CTO at Harness, Paul Mowat, Principal DevOps Architect at Advanced, Alex Harrington, Principal DevOps Engineer at Advanced, and hopefully getting connected with us soon, we'll have Jay Patel, Head of Platform Engineering for DevOps at Advanced as well. So Martin, Paul, and Alex, thank you all so much for joining us today on Techstrong Learning. Martin, how would you like to get our conversation started?
I'm Martin Reynolds. I'm Field CTO at Harness. I've not long been at Harness. I was previously, I've been here coming up for 3 months. Previously, I actually worked with Alex and Paul and Jay at Advanced, and I was there for 13 years previously. So this is a new experience for me working with them in this way. So I'll let them introduce themselves. Alex first.
Yes, hello everyone. Alex Harrington. So I've been with Advanced for probably 8 or so years now in the DevOps field. I started off with a lot of health and care kind of applications and services, and more recently have been working more as we've progressed towards cloud and starting to standardize on the way we do things using tools like Harness and so on.
Awesome. And Paul?
Yeah, hi. So Paul Mowat here. So I am a Principal DevOps Architect at Advanced. My background comes very much from the software development perspective. I spent a number of years building and creating enterprise applications, and over the past couple of years moved towards sort of DevOps and how we sort of enhance that developer experience and velocity when delivering software.
Okay, and that's awesome. If Jay manages to get connected, we'll let her introduce herself. But in the meantime, I think we should probably just get into it. So I'm going to pretend to be Jay a little bit here, just because I do understand kind of where you were coming from. But you guys will have to definitely fill me in on the plan going forwards, which is, so as I understand it, Harness had been, and the CI/CD landscape at Advanced was, there was a lot of use, a reasonable amount of consolidation on the tooling, but not necessarily consolidation on ways of using the tooling. There's a fairly strong drive for you guys to move to a consolidated platform and ways of delivering the software. And to do that, you needed to make some decisions about how you were going to do that and how you were planning it. Now, I know you guys definitely then kind of moved into how do we get from this, 1,500, 2,000 odd different pipeline styles into something that's more consistent and reliable? And so, how did you go about analyzing that, and what were the kind of things that you found? So maybe, Paul, we could start with you on that analysis side and like
Sure.
How you did that discovery.
Okay, so just for a bit of background and context, Advanced has grown over a vast number of years through acquiring companies. And what that means is it's been very hard to sort of define and enforce standards in how we want to build software. So what it's led to is, if you could think of a technology stack, chances are that we have it. So the way that we've worked through this is to send out some surveys and have some sort of collaboration with the engineering and product teams to try and identify what the commonalities are. So the things that we're looking for there are, what tech stacks do they use? What automated testing do they perform? What sort of governance, security, and quality scanning do they do? And what are their sort of deployment targets? So by deployment targets, I mean, do they deploy into AWS? Do they use Lambdas, EC2, Kubernetes, that sort of thing? And the idea is that once we have that information, we can start to identify the common approaches that we have across the different products and look at building out common mechanisms, including templates for how we can accelerate and enable those teams.
That's awesome. And so you've done some of that analysis already, right? You kind of already have your results. So what kind of things did you find?
So the analysis is still ongoing, but from the results that we have so far, we've identified that we actually have more commonalities than what we possibly anticipated. So we've identified that a vast majority of our products are built on .NET, Java, Node. We have some Python, we have some C++, but those are the sort of the core technology stacks. We've also identified that the deployment targets are quite consistent as well. So we tend to build business software. So a lot of them are deploying to EC2, to Lambdas, to containers, and the equivalent within sort of Azure as well. So there's a lot of commonalities between the applications and how they deploy.
So so based on that, did that give you that kind of that outline of the what you wanted to build, the if you like, your blueprint, your template for going forwards, and and what things did you build? Maybe Alex can pick up from the other side of kind of what did you actually start putting together on the back of that information?
I mean, obviously, we've been a long-time user of Harness, and started from the for several years now. And one of the challenges for us is the growth that we had within Harness, as well as the new companies, the new products and services that we're acquiring or building ourselves. So as we kind of consolidated the information and so on, we wanted to align that well with the new features for the next generation of the Harness platform, and quite a different approach has been taken with that to what we had built on originally. So we've been able to leverage a lot more of the improvements in templating engine, the way that pipelines can be designed and delivered, and probably one of the most important areas to us around a governance model for us, because we're trying to do things with smaller teams, and we can't necessarily scale up to support tens, dozens of teams on the other side. We absolutely want to be embracing the IDP and allowing a self-service model as we go with it. So we trying to use our analysis, come up with a set of common templates that we've got, such as we roll our own artifact management system, so how we can make that easily available to the teams without them understanding all the intricacies of the authentication that we require and so on. And probably I think we've settled on maybe 25 or so common templates that we feel is a good library to build upon. We're conscious that it's complementary to the teams and facilitates the teams rather than innovation, creativity. It's all very much part of the role and something we endorse. And really the next step for us is to start to build out and gain confidence in what we've created and verify the model. using CD as the start and then CI along with it.
So those 25 or so, roughly, are those full pipelines, or are they more like the kind of building blocks for pipelines? I heard you talking about, you wanted to be like a facilitator to the teams. How important is kind of making that accessible to the teams and making it complementary for you guys? Maybe Paul can pick up on that side.
Yeah. So we very much see like the direction of travel that we want is to not build pipelines that are too big that it makes it very difficult to modify or adjust. We very much are focused on building the building blocks to enable the different parts. So the way that we see it is that we build these composable templates that can then be used by the team to deliver that piece of functionality that they require. So I sort of look at it in the way of sort of a piece of code. We care about the input and we care about the output. The bit in the middle where we're doing all our validation and all our sort of quality checking in a pipeline, it's not really too different from a piece of software. We know what our standards are. We know what we need to do from a security and a quality perspective. The key bit for us is what's coming in, what that technology is, and what's coming out, where it's going to be deployed to. And if we can build up the mechanisms and the templates to allow all of these pieces to be put together, then it gives us a library that should be quite powerful.
Yeah, and building on top of that for more, the new feature, the new priorities that's coming down, code signing, software assurance, software bill of materials generation, that kind of thing. That's where we are going to be able to add value, because it's not easy, it's complex. For many teams over to solve that problem is just not scalable. It's never been achievable. So we've typically found certificates end up getting compromised, or not compromised, but it's hard to manage them and so on. And it's those areas that we want to bring in. We can then embed the expertise within a smaller team and then share that out.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you bring up the kind of the security and the software assurance side. I know because you guys have shared with me, but I know that you've done some cool stuff to kind of equally help roll out and ensure that you have the security testing as part of those kind of Lego bricks that you're building out. And I know you've done quite a bit of work around that. Do you want to just kind of give us the kind of helicopter view of what you did around that and what the goal is?
Yeah, sure. So that's fine. So over the years, we've had a number of pieces of security tooling that we use. So some of the tooling is Dependabot, and we use a tool called Fossa for doing license and vulnerability scanning. We use SonarQube for doing static code analysis. We use a number of native AWS tools for doing security there as well. And what we've always found is trying to roll tools like these out in a consistent and governed way is always a challenge, because you've always got teams with products that have different timelines and roadmaps and whatnot. So what we did was we looked at, well, how can we do most of this work rather than defining the standards to the teams? So the approach that we took was to build reusable templates that we can reuse. And then we wrote some automation that allows us to basically roll out all of this security and testing and governance tooling for the teams. So that's still in progress, but the goal is we identify all the different repositories and all the different accounts in AWS that the teams are using, and we automate everything. It gives us then that complete picture of what our security estate would look like and what our quality estate would look like, without having to get the product teams to do too much, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, give them the right information, right? But don't necessarily make them do all the work or be an expert in the tooling. Yeah. So that absolutely makes sense.
Yeah. So it's going back to that thing about acting as facilitators. We want to facilitate the teams to deliver quality software. We don't want to act as blockers. So what can we do to make it easy for them?
I like that. It's always nice to be collaborative instead of obstructive. So, no, I like that very, very much. So, kind of, I know you're going through this journey right now. I know that this is your kind of plan for the future. But so I guess really kind of, how's it going? When, what's that looking like for the kind of next 3-6 months? Are you feeling confident with the blueprint? Does it feel like the right plan? How does that feel as a team that's actually delivering to, I know what is quite a small team for you guys, delivering to, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of engineers ultimately?
I think it's one of those where we're starting to understand the benefits with the way we operate, on being able to have the right control over the way that we're delivering these things. In a less mature model, it's a bit too wide ranging, a bit too broad, and so on, and that then has typically ended up with us lots of duplications and not benefiting from what's been done previously, not benefiting from their grown experience and so on. And I think, like with the improvements or the change around RBAC and those mechanisms that we've got in next gen, we want to look heavily at the IDP, because thinking of more of this from a platform engineering perspective, again going on with that facilitator model, so that the bottlenecks are removed, going away from sort of any kind of queuing system to get your work done. I think the next steps for us will be to take our priorities. And then we've got to stretch ourselves to utilize feature set as we want to. What's out there, make sure we're getting the most out of it and the best out of it. And then stretching into things like that we're getting from it with benefits over our the compute across AWS and Azure, being able to manage to spend there effectively, making that front and center with people, and not hiding away from it, but as part of these models, bringing dashboards to people so that they can see what the impact is on cost. But also another important part for us is that we want to be able to have like that emergency cord, if and when we need to stop doing things, and that's always been tricky to get to. But this is kind of enabling us to do a reset and then think about how we can introduce these policies and so on, so that we can, stop people doing bad things.
Yeah, and it's become it's certainly a phrase I've used often, but I guess the goal there is, make it easy for people to do the right thing, but hard for them to do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
You want to make it easy for them to, and facilitate them, as you described earlier, but you don't want them to be doing the wrong thing. And I know sometimes people do that with the best intentions, but ultimately, you want to make sure that you're governed and compliant, especially because I know for you guys that some of those environments that you operate in are fairly heavily regulated, certainly around the healthcare space and the education space that are some of the places you operate in. So, looking at where you are now and looking at your kind of go forward plans, what are your, I know you've got this like ongoing, and you mentioned IDP or internal developer portal, which I know is something that's you're very keen to have to enable the teams at Advanced. But what are your other things that if you're looking past your immediate horizon, you're kind of I know you've got your goals and you're in the middle of this process, but just looking a little bit past your immediate horizon, what are the things that you're excited about, that you're really interested to see how they develop, that you're thinking, okay, we've got this now, but where do we go in 6, 9, 12 months time? Where are the next steps that you see kind of maturing that even further and facilitating the developers better, maybe speeding up how things happen?
Okay, so I think that there's a few things there. So once we get to the point where we have these composable templates and we can start to build and deploy applications end to end, then the next step is really working out where we can improve the efficiencies there. So a lot of that is going to be around the standards and the compliance. Like, what can we do to detect if there's any issues with people not following standards? What can we do to automate sort of remediation of any sort of vulnerabilities that are there? So using things like AI, I think is going to be quite a big space over the next year or two within DevOps for what we can use that with. So like any piece of software that we write has to be maintained is the reality of it. So what can we do to use the appropriate tooling to help us achieve that? So I think that's a big space. Going into the IDP, we are very excited to use the IDP. We see that as being a real enabler for us to deliver for our engineering teams. We already have a page long of ideas for doing that. And it's just simple things such as creating GitHub repositories that are already pre-configured. Just makes a big difference. You're starting to enforce those standards. You're starting to have consistency. With consistency comes the ability to have better automation, better validation, and all that nice things that we all want.
I think also behind the the IDP and which is in the platform is to start leveraging the GitOps features that are clearly there. I mean, one of the challenges we've typically had with our infrastructure as code has always been the nature of it being as a one-way sync. There's no two-way sync going on, and so we typically will stand things up. It'll be a while. You've got drift on either side. Consolidating those challenges has always been a problem. But looking at to leverage GitOps that's there, having the option built on top of the clusters that we've got there to have a two-way sync coming in there to save our, to give us a real picture when we're picking things up and enabling those. It's interesting that there's a question in the Q&A there about how do we go about this, in highly bureaucratic and change-resistant organisations, which is quite apt for Advanced, really, because we do have quite a lot of that, to be honest with you, and it really is a struggle. But I think for me, the one thing that I've learned is about setting expectations and about the ownership of certain areas. There's not ownership that people can't contribute. It's so that you've got to. We had to sort of reduce the conversation. We needed to say, right, this group's going to take control of these areas, and this is going to work with you and drive it forwards. Remove the option that people can work around things. But with the expectations, it's like if you have challenges, that implies that there's some difficulties going on. Sometimes I think expectations are way too high, and I think that's important to use the platform. Then be able to see the metrics. You can actually get real information that's coming back to plot your progress. When you don't have those metrics, that's where I think the bureaucracy comes in, change resistance comes in, because it's too easy to negotiate away fear and things like that.
Yeah, that's been a big one for us, is the ability to change. And like you mentioned, it's something that we have struggled with in the past for a whole number of reasons that we would need a day's call to get into. But for me, the first step is to communicate, collaborate. So don't try and enforce standards on teams. Work together to identify what is the right way forward for everyone. And if you take them on that journey and you provide what the benefits are of that approach, what you will find is most people are welcoming to it. Like, if you can make their life easier, people generally want that to happen.
I mean, we could give a good example. Obviously, Martin, you will fully understand this because we all worked on it. But we obviously a couple of years ago we took the decision to migrate away from our artifact management system to our own solution. We could see the benefits on doing it, and it's funny, but one of the most effective tools for us was how we went about collaborating, how we documented our process to take away our support duties and so on. And we could then refer back to a single plane, to a single source of truth. And we see very much that with the IDP module to build on top of, to have that centralized area, because we can then make sure documentation looks the same. We can make sure that the way it's built, where it's coming from, and so on. And we were able to make a change, millions of artifacts over with a small team, 2 or 3 people, and by having that there and those tools, we're adamant that is going to help us to succeed as we move forwards with this self-service model, but whilst also meaning that we're not completely taking ownership of the first project, and then how do we scale after that? Who do we support after? We can't. We're already committed to the first in the queue sort of thing.
So, I mean, you covered quite a lot there, and I'm trying to decide which thread I want to pull on, but I think I'll go back right to the start. So, like Paul, you mentioned a little bit about AI, and you also mentioned about using AI to help resolve some of the problems that you have, and you see that's a benefit in DevOps, and I love that. But I kind of wanted to pull on that thread a little bit of a different direction, because I also know that lots of engineering organizations are looking at AI generated code. So there's tools out there, but how do you make sure that you can trust the code that comes from those AI generated systems that are being deployed into your environments? And do you think your blueprint that you're kind of building out will help you feel confident to do that?
Okay. I think there's steps that we will need to take first before we get to the point where we would be confident to just let AI generated code straight in. I still think we're a long way away from there. I think there'll be a lot of manual review from developers for a good while. And then I think you're going to need very strong automated tests and verification as well, so that you are still achieving what you're expecting it to. But I think using AI isn't going to solve all the challenges that we've got, but it can act as an enabler to help some of them. So detecting that, for example, some node packages version has got a vulnerability, and there's a new version released that has fixed that. Well, we could detect that and automate the fix, and then run the appropriate tests to determine whether everything is okay. So I think there's a place for it. I don't think it's going to solve everything, but it can definitely benefit.
I think the angles come in more that we'll want to leverage the AI features and functionality that come into tools like Harness to enable our members to perform more, to perform better, rather than take the fearful view of it's going to do everything. Because if that was the case, I think we'd all be doing CD without everything be fully automated. And there's a reason why we have highly regulated industries, and there's a reason why we still have abundance of caution. But I think, like, done the right way, automated generation of unit tests and so on is going to facilitate, because you've got, especially in the DevOps skill set, it tends to be quite a broad range of skills required. If we can optimize on those kind of things, opens up time to look at your architectures and how that becomes front and center, and how we change our workflows to use it over the next couple of years minimum, I think is going to be particularly interesting, particularly important. It's like, can we use those tools in the CLI? Where exactly are they? And I think there's an element of vendors of also having to understand how they're so capable at the moment, and the picture they paint is such, but it's still hard to know and target it in the right areas where we can get the use out of it.
Yeah, we have had some success with AI, particularly with helping us build out templates. So basically what we've been doing is just asking some AI to generate some templates for us, and giving it some examples of ones that we've handcrafted. And we've had some success there. They've not been perfect, but they've probably been about 80% of the way there. So with a little bit of work from our team, we've been able to sort of accelerate the delivery of that. Whereas if someone had to generate all those by hand, that's obviously quite a more substantial time investment.
I think it'll be interesting to see how you can use those capabilities within your pipelines, rather than it suggesting. It's almost like coming the next level, like suggestions to create your pipelines, but then be able to reuse them, almost, a bit similar to this world of synthetic data and so on. How can we use those results, and it's sort of self-improving and so on, and then feed into that continuous verification.
So I do love some of those things that you were pulling out there. So particularly, that idea that you're accelerating your development by using AI, and you're using it to solve those problems. Because that means ultimately that's good for your business, right? To deliver more quickly, of a high quality. The other thing that was really interesting was your description about if you were going to let AI generated code requires all these checks, but do you think that is actually different to what you do for the human generated code? Or do you think if you have really good CI/CD, are you solving both problems? If you see what I mean? So if you had all the things you wanted.
Yeah, if we had all the things we wanted with the appropriate unit testing, integration testing, security testing, continuous verification, we had all the things that we would say is our gold standard for a pipeline, then I think it would be the same. I don't think there would be too much difference, to be honest.
So yeah, because I kind of had this view, and I could hear it almost being played back to me by what you were saying, which is, I think if you have really good CI/CD with all the quality controls and the governance in place for a human, then you probably, and you can trust it 100%, then you're ready to kind of introduce AI, right? But you have to be at the, I think otherwise you're adding in more controls. But I do love it being a helpmate, as you described. So
I think Martin, it's also that at the root of a lot of the current models with AI is predictive, and predictive is highly accurate predictive, but there's still absolutely, until we get quite a bit further down the road, we need to verify those predictions and make sure they're accurate. And then again, that comes back to your regulated industries. And in advance, we typically tend to be focusing in and around government, healthcare, these kind of things. And there are obligations there to the people and so on. So we have to take those extra steps to do things.
Gotcha. So I think the thing I'd like to focus in a little bit on, and I'm missing our extra person, because I think I would ask Jay this, but I'm going to rely on you guys for this now. So I know you're on the journey, and you've talked a little bit about it's really, where does that vision take Advanced? So where's the vision? I know you guys are incredibly talented and you love the hands-on, but I do know you understand the long-term vision. So I really want to hear, where is what you're doing getting you towards that kind of long-term vision, and what is that vision for Advanced and its platform and suite of products?
Okay, so for me, and this is how I view it, is that once we put in place all of these building blocks and all of these sort of standards and governance and automations, then as Advanced grows, we've in the past grown through acquisition, and we've quite often struggled to integrate those acquisitions into our standards and our tooling and whatnot. But if we've got everything there in blocks that are ready, that should become a much easier task to do. So we should be able to start to streamline those integrations of anybody that we acquire. That gives us a number of benefits: cost for one, security for another, scalability, reliability. Just having all of those going into what our platform is allows us to grow from a number of perspectives, a number of sides. What it gives us for products that we develop is the teams aren't having to worry about any of that. All that the teams will then have to focus on is the business logic. And that is the bit that drives the business value and enables us to go to market quicker. So that's where we see the benefit coming from. Well, we as an I.
I think also it's, you need us to perform well, to be a successful organization, you need to be lean. And it will, overall, these steps are important to us, so we can do more with less. We can build expertise in the right areas and share it. We increase our consistency of our quality, consistency in the way the products look, consistency in the way they're deployed, consistency of expectations from customers' side of things as well. There's such a passion for delighting customers, and flipping that around and moving that focus so that we can be lean, a lean SaaS business, and we have the required things in place so that we can deliver things cost effectively, we perform well, we're good for our own people, we're good for customers and those things. And that's part of the vision that is quite regularly shared about and is forming a part of our probably short to medium and longer term at the moment. And it's actually been quite motivating, because it's given us a chance to do a reset and look at things like this, and get that vision. Because it's not, when you have such a company that over time it becomes a bit difficult to create plans. You've got all these intricacies and dependencies all over the place, but it's all part of that, to get clear vision that we can all share, and then that Conway's law reflects your organization reflecting by the way you deliver software and so on. So
yeah,
Sorry,
carry on.
To add to that as well is, if we get to the point where most of this, what we would maybe class as housekeeping and just general sort of business as usual work is done, and we've got a lot of that automated, what it means is that we can take our teams and get them to focus on the innovation and what's interesting, rather than just churning through the same thing day after day. So as a go forward for your sort of career and for the things that you're going to be working on, that's a much more interesting prospect. Or at least for me it is, because I want to innovate. I want to identify what's coming next. What are the exciting things that we can build, and focus on that.
Yeah, so it was really interesting listening to that, because I think there's probably similarities in lots of business in those kind of goals. I did love the phrase, and I can't remember whether it was Paul or Alex who just said it, but I love that thing of that you want to delight the customer, and everything is feeding. It's almost like everything is feeding backwards from there. So to delight the customer, you kind of need to get your features out, and they need to be good quality, and the product needs to satisfy their need. And to do that, you need good, secure delivery processes. So all of this kind of it's all feeding back from that goal, and the template that you have right now and the blueprint that you're building out is so that the engineers can be happy engineers, and the product managers are happy, and the customers are delighted because they're getting all those good things, and there's less bugs, and it's more secure, and that's all pretty exciting. And flipping that round onto then we can do all the really interesting stuff. It is quite interesting, and I know, because I know you guys a little bit well, but I know that there's what are those big innovations where you'd like to spend some time. Certainly there's one I specifically want to ask Alex about, because I know it's a pet thing of his, and I'll ask him after. So I'll get Alex to answer second, and then but Paul, if you've got all this stuff done, what's the next exciting thing that you want to play with? What's the thing that you think is really going to make you disappear into that little bubble of yours where you go into super creative mode?
So I'm very excited. And I think it's a combination of all these things. So I think it's a combination of having these sort of blueprints for delivery and deployment in combination with the IDP and a bit with AI, and really seeing how they all come together. And I want to get to a point where I can very quickly scaffold a platform service within our platform and say, I want a platform service that does this, and I can use AI that goes and generates that according to my standards and my templates, and give me 80-90% of what it is that I want. And then I can go and get the development teams to do that bit of magic in the middle, that they need to do. So that's what I am very excited for, is to see how it all comes together.
Okay, that's pretty cool, actually. That's very cool. So the thing I wanted to ask, specifically ask Alex about is, and I might be slightly biased in asking this question, but I can remember several years ago in Advanced, we had a DevOps day, and Alex, I think it was the first time I heard you do any public speaking, and I know it was internal, but you spoke about chaos testing. So, I know it's not something that you're doing yet, but I'm interested to hear if you still have that same passion for that. And if it's, long term, is that something that you're looking to kind of come back to?
Absolutely. Because as you mentioned previously there, Martin, that I've always very much felt, through I've grown my experience in my role, that DevOps, I've always approached it back to front, start to think from the customer end backwards. Just felt that it helps me to benefit and not waste time on things that you'll get blocked on in the middle. And so the importance of testing, stressing production systems so that we are proactive rather than reactive to these things. Again, going to important, health and care solutions. If our software is down or unavailable, we can't take calls for the NHS and so on, then there's the need to revert to pen and paper and all kinds of things, which puts stress on employees for the NHS, it puts stress for us, and so on. We want to be ahead of those things so that we are running experiments in production. We are doing those tests against capacity, allowing us to be able to take requests for features, ideas, and know that we're ready for them. And I can think you can see advancements with the AI capabilities of suggesting experiments to run and so on, and how because sometimes as soon as you start to go down this rabbit hole of chaos engineering and so on, you're very much in a hypothesis and world of proving things out and trying to come up with these questions. There's obviously going to be a lot of boilerplates there that you can tick off, make sure my compute resources are okay and those things, but we want to get more creative with them. And as we start to go across solution and so on, how we actually take those experiments. But absolutely for us, having the platform to allow us to get to production chaos testing, for me, there's no value in it if we don't get there, even if we just start in a non-production environment. So it's a pet like a pet hobby kind of interest for me anyway. I have huge interest in the conversation happening in and around the aviation industry and so on with relation to these things and how they're branching out into this world and how they have ended up with the leaders, who are much further ahead in this space. But having that into the platform as well, to have that capabilities is going to help us, and again, centralize that effort, because it's going to be an area of expertise. Decided we'll have teams and capabilities of chaos engineering and that within. It's probably unrealistic, but if we can introduce those core concepts into our pipelines and so on, we'll gain confidence of running those tests in production. And that's what a lot of it is about. Going to product managers and they'll be scared, fearful, like, what, you're going to turn this off in production kind of thing. We all would be, but if we have experience and confidence in it, then we do that in the right way and make sure our architectures are right, make sure we're ready to go as we scale up.
Cool. Thank you for that. So I've just noticed in the chat that somebody's kind of so can you talk about what a blueprint is? And I think I guess I'll loop back a little bit on it because I think I have to fill Jay's space a little bit because she wasn't able to join. But the idea of a blueprint, and then you guys can kind of fill the gap as into how we might use them. But really, the blueprint is the combination of we have source code, and we want to build and deploy it in a certain way to deploy to a known landing zone tech stack. So whether that's I'm building a service and I want it to be able to deploy it into our platform Kubernetes cluster or into our, our serverless estate. And there's that blueprint basically means that it consists of, it must consist of uploading the artifacts to, in your case, advanced artifacts, I believe it's called, and that it passes that it's had all the right security scanning, that it's compliant with the security scanning, potentially that the code is signed, that the container is signed, that it's been through the appropriate testing, and it's deployed into that environment, in a compliant way with the costs managed and all the rest of it. And that's what those blueprints are, right? They're if you like, the standard path to production for various different technology stacks.
Yeah,
I'm playing that back.
That's exactly it in a nutshell. It's really everything from building the application to doing the testing, the verification, all the way through to the deployment, but also the monitoring and the observability would come into that as well. So
blueprints also will enable us to feed back to customers to a certain extent, because customers now they're coming with more requirements. The software delivery comes with the expectations around durability, availability, and those things, and it enables us, a bit similar to design patterns, to have those conversations, and then to be able to cover off where we, and identify gaps, but also take things further. We mentioned supply chain and so on, improving provenance all the way up to runtime. Do we want to go to runtime scanning, and add that capability and that pillar to what we do as well? And that blueprint will give us, a central place that we contribute and build on, and then repeat that part of DevOps, isn't it? Repeat.
The repeatability is, that's the key. Being able to do it again and again and again, and sticking with those templates into those environments. I'm very conscious that we've got a little bit of time left, and we started a little bit late because of my own technical problem there. Apparently AirPods were not the way to go. So I've seen somebody asking if we can see the blueprints in action. That's not something we're set up for on this call, but maybe that's something for later. I think I'd like to spend the last few minutes just really kind of looping right back to a degree to the beginning. And we've kind of got this journey that you're working through, and I guess it's and this is a little bit selfish because I'm now sat here as from Harness, but how is that working, right? How is the partnership working? Is it really, is it still the collaboration that it's always been? Is that kind of the, how is that working? How are you getting on with the team? And then, is it going forwards? And okay. I'm going to come back to that question that's in the thing about the blueprint after, but I'm just intrigued to,
Yeah. Okay. So, as you know, Martin, from when you were here before, you moved to Harness. We've always had a close relationship with Harness. I think we were one of their first customers within the first 10 anyway. And we have calls with members of Harness weekly. We have very open dialogue and very open communications. We've used the first generation of the product. We're migrating onto the next generation of the product, which has much more functionality and gives us a lot of the things that we need in a central place. So CI, CD, security testing, chaos engineering when we get to it, service reliability, a whole heap of things that you need in a modern piece of software. So that is all brilliant. What we tend to find is because we're trying to do this on so many different tech stacks and different technologies, we can hit some niggles and challenges, which you will with any piece of software. The key thing there is those communications and that collaboration where we can get things turned around pretty quickly, and we can get solutions in place that are appropriate. And we've done that, and we continue to do that as well. So we feel that we've got a good working relationship with the members of Harness and Harness itself, and they allow us to accelerate with the things that we need to do.
I think one of the things that's testament to the relationship is we're big users of the CCM module, the cloud cost module. And obviously Jay, it's a shame that Jay's not here to be able to give much more depth on this, but she has particular passion around FinOps and cloud cost governance and so on. And to be able to have alignment there, to have planets in a line and be at the right time for us and be able to work with partner, in this case, Harness, to shape what was there for us. I mean, it gave us great capabilities. And I think for me, it is the difference. It's like there's a difference between having to become a customer of a company offering a solution, have an account manager versus a partnership. Partnership's two-way conversation. We need to go to Harness and get guidance. It's not just we need this. We want to know if our clusters are configured correctly, if we're going to get performance. And that means a lot to us to have that for peace of mind from our perspective as well. And it's not always that way in the world, but there are, when you have a good relationship, it does become a shining example. It's almost like an extension of the company in terms of the way that we work with Martin and Andy and the people that we're working with quite week to week really. So very positive impact for us.
That's awesome, and it's nice to hear. But I think as we come towards the end, there's a couple of things I wanted to call out, and I did want to say a big thank you. I'm trying to keep a track of some of the questions in here that have kind of come up. I think in terms of the blueprints, there's some interesting questions coming up around that, and I think maybe we can follow on with a blog that explains a bit more about how the blueprints work, because I think the blueprint is a phrase we're using for a combination of things that make up a landing zone, and how it's the process of how the software gets deployed. And it's kind of, that blueprint is sort of interchangeable in that. So, I think maybe we'll follow up with a blog article for that hopefully you guys don't mind helping me co-author. So there you go. Direct live ask for a bit of support there.
I'm sure that'll be fine, Martin.
Always happy to have conversations with you, Martin. You know that.
Awesome. That's good news. So first of all, I guess the thing I want to do is, and I want to say a huge thank you to you guys for taking the time out to do this. A huge thank you to Jay, who isn't on the call, and I know is probably kicking herself for not being able to get on. I know it's fault. So it's a shame, but I also it's a big thanks to her as well, even though she's not directly on. Also, just for letting you two have the time to be on this call as well, which is super important. I did have a couple of yes, okay. I've just seen one question from somebody which is said, could we have a future session that shows some demonstrations of examples CI/CD aligned? I'm pretty sure we can do that. Again, I will have to talk with the team at Advanced, and hopefully they will free up some, they can free up some time to maybe do a live demos of some of those processes a little bit further down the line, something we can talk about and maybe come back to. I did want to make a couple of call outs around some of the things that we have coming up. So we have some stuff in the handouts that people can do. So there's an ebook that's available, which is eight deployment patterns structures. So that's in there. We also have a big virtual event which we're sponsoring coming up called Chaos Carnival, which I'm actually genuinely super excited to attend and watch some of the people that are attending. I know that we've got people from US Air Force and Space Force who are talking about chaos engineering as one of the keynote speakers. Honestly, I saw that in the list of presenters and I was just like, I definitely have to watch that. I am super interested. There are also some amazing presenters at that virtual event. I can't recommend it enough. Aside from that, we really appreciate everybody attending. We appreciate our customers at Advanced and them taking the time to talk about where they are in the journey they're on. And hopefully, maybe next time we're doing a webinar with them, yes, they could maybe do some demos, but they'll be further down that journey and coming out the other side of really seeing that transformation completed. So all in all, just thank you very, very much, and I think that's pretty much us for today.
Awesome. Well, Martin, thank you so much for wrapping that up. Alex, Paul, we appreciate all of you guys joining us today on Techstrong Learning. This has been such an awesome hour. So before I release our audience, just a couple of final reminders. Today's session was recorded, and we will be sending it to you as soon as it becomes available. But you can also find it living on the DevOps website at devops.com/webinars. It will be in the on-demand section. Another reminder, we will be selecting our 2 most engaged attendees to receive a $50 Amazon gift card. So ways to still become eligible is to send in a webinar survey or a survey that will pop up on your screen right after we close out. Martin, Paul, Alex, thank y'all so much. Harness, we'd like to thank Harness for sponsoring our program today. And to everyone who has been with us for the past hour, thank you for your time. We appreciate you, and we hope to see you at a future Techstrong Learning experience. Have a great rest of your day, and you may now disconnect, everyone.